Hi, it's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky back with my plans and pans. I'm still in Washington today, heading home, but we're coming back to do, hopefully finish our business for the year in the House of Representatives. But I am sure ready to go back anytime, as long as the Senate passes the Build Back Better bill, and if there are any changes that may have to come back to the House. So I am ready to go whenever, even on New Year's Eve, on Christmas Eve, on whenever. We have to get it done. It's going to be a transformational piece of legislation for the American people. Today I was at a press conference with Carolyn Maloney, who is the chair of the Oversight and Reform Committee in the House of Representatives, talking about a 3-year report that talked about the really the price gouging of the pharmaceutical industry and documenting the kind of tactics that they do. One of the points that I made is that the pharmaceutical companies are always talking about how they need the money for research and development. And what I pointed out in that press conference is that the top 14 drug companies spent $56 billion more on stock buybacks, on dividends to their shareholders, and to their CEOs, CEO pay, than they did on research and development in the last 5 years. $56 billion more. So, this is not true that they need the money for research and development. Of course, there is very little transparency, and one of the things that I've been supporting along with Carolyn Maloney is to get clarity on how much do they really spend, how much is on those TV ads that you see all the time. But we also had testimony from a woman who has diabetes and the difficulties of so many people getting their insulin. The good news is that in the Build Back Better bill, the price of insulin will be no more than $35 a month. It's still, for a lot of people, a significant amount of money. And in that bill also, we're going to limit the ability of the pharmaceutical companies to raise the cost, how much seniors have to pay out of pocket, and to begin negotiating that the drug companies are going to have to negotiate for lower prices. We pay as Americans 2, 3, sometimes 4 times as much for the same exact drugs than the rest of the country because they target American consumers. They see us as the chumps. And we also know that people are dying, suffering, and we have the names of some of the people who have literally died because they could not get their drugs. This is a national scandal, and we addressed that this morning. The other thing I wanted to tell you about, there's a number of bills that actually did pass the House. It was a very busy week for the House of Representatives. We did pass legislation dealing with ALS, such a horrible, deadly disease. Right now, there is no cure, but there is hope. And on the floor of the House, I said I stand on behalf of one of my lifelong best friends, Artie. He and I went to grammar school together. We met each other when we were about 6, 7 years old and stayed in touch all the years until he decided to take his own life. This was before there was any hope of some kind of a medication or treatment for ALS. I also said I stand for Brian Wallach and his wife Sandra, constituents, Evanston residents. Brian testified before our committee talking about the need to at least let trials take place so that people can have access to what looked to be now promising medicines that weren't there for my dear friend Artie, but are there for Brian and all those people who suffer. Brian is part of a group called I Am ALS that advocates. And so we got that bill passed in the House of Representatives. And there was a celebration among the ALS community, people who have it and people who have loved ones with it. But now we have to get it past the House. We had well over 300 co-sponsors to the bill, which is more than the 218 it takes to pass a bill in the House. So there was huge bipartisan support, and I hope that we'll get it done and, continue the research, but also access to promising medications for people with ALS. You probably, with most Americans during the Trump administration, have been worried about all the violations that we perceived of our Constitution, of our democracy, the abuse of power. And so this week, the House of Representatives passed the Protecting Our Democracy Act. And I want to just read to you a number of the provisions, and I'm sure you'll be nodding your head. The bill prevents the abuse of the pardon power, which the President of the United States used all too freely. Suspend the statute of limitations for federal offenses committed by a sitting president or vice president. Prohibits federal officials from accepting foreign emoluments. That's gifts of any sort or contributions. It strengthens the protections for federal whistleblowers, including interns. It includes the provisions to strengthen enforcement of the Hatch Act. That's the act that says that federal employees cannot directly engage in politics, in partisan politics. It requires the president and vice president and major party candidates to provide 10 years of tax returns. It looks like we're going to get them from the president. Finally, there's been a decision, but let's hope that it's sooner rather than later. The president is great at procrastinating and slowing things down, but now he's been ordered to do it officially. Requires the reporting of foreign contacts and expands the scope of prohibitions on foreign donations. It addresses nepotism in the White House executive branch. What's nepotism? Hiring your family, close family, which of course we saw all the time in that Trump administration. And requires the inauguration committee to follow disclosure requirements and bans foreign donations, and on and on and on. That's not all. So, we're going to make sure that the abuses that we saw in the last administration going forward cannot happen for any administration. It never mentioned the Trump administration. It applies to all future presidents, vice presidents, and top office holders. I had a hearing this week of my Consumer Protection and Commerce Subcommittee talking about possible ways, actually legislation that's been introduced to hold tech accountable. We heard from several experts about how algorithms, that is that electronic recommending that the tech companies do automatically, that often push disinformation. And, for example, I talked about a 13-year-old girl who was really pushed by Facebook into an app that would provide pictures of perfect bodies, perfect lives, and she became addicted. And it wasn't long before not only was she addicted, but she had an eating disorder. And these platforms, Facebook, don't take responsibility for that. And finally, she was able to escape and got off of that platform and off of that app. But millions and millions of girls, as we found from the whistleblower, at the knowledge of Facebook, have actually been directed to anorexia apps. Think about that. And so we need to hold them accountable. So there were really 5 pieces of legislation, but one I also wanted to tell you that I'm very happy that there has been a lawsuit now that the Rohingya people have sued Facebook for the genocide that happened in Myanmar. And so many people who died in that Facebook enabled genocide to take place. You know, Mark Zuckerberg came before a committee that I was on some time ago about the genocide, and you know what his response was? We missed that one. Yep, we missed that one. That is not good enough. We cannot allow that to happen without any accountability. And so I have a bill that would further empower the Federal Trade Commission to protect whistleblowers. Right now, the people who work for companies that have complaints about what's going on are not protected if they report them to the Federal Trade Commission. So that's just one of the bills that is in a package that's going to be passed, I hope soon, in the House of Representatives to make the internet a much safer place for consumers and for small businesses and ordinary people as well. I want to remind you that the Illinois Housing Development Authority does have the rental assistance program. It reopened on Monday, December 6th. So you landlords and renters are eligible, so make sure that you check that out. Also open enrollment. You still have the opportunity to participate in Obamacare, in the exchange, and if you sign up by December 15th, your insurance will begin on January 1st. Please check it out. But if you miss that date, that if you sign up by January 15th, you will begin your insurance coverage on February 1st. But you know, if you want to start at the first of the year, make sure that by December 15th that you sign up for care. And finally, the coronavirus. 16 and 17-year-olds are now eligible for booster shots. It does seem from the research, if you have a booster shot, that the Omicron is not as likely to catch you, and so you want to make sure that everyone who is eligible for a third vaccine for the booster shot, please go out and get it. And of course, if you're not vaccinated at all, go ahead and do it. On Thursday, we saw 9,301 new cases of COVID in Illinois, and sadly, 54 deaths. It's still happening. It's still with us. All counties in the state are seeing higher transmission rates. So, you know, don't hesitate. Don't wait. Do it right away, and you can have a much more comfortable feeling as you enjoy the holidays. So have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where my handle is @Jan Schakowsky.